Hello everyone, so I've made myself a coffee and I've sat down and I've decided to record a few videos and sort of the new... Oh, Susie, niet krabben. Sorry, I was just thinking my cat was trying to claw up one of the chairs, but she's just using the scratch pole, I think the English word is. But anyway, I decided to record a few videos, and this one I'm going to make about the Dutch flag, because the Dutch flag has undergone quite a few changes since it was first unveiled in the Great Rebellion against the Spanish in the latter half of the 16th century. So as you can see, the image that I hope won't crash my computer has got a flag, and it's different in a few ways to the modern Dutch flag, and the most obvious one is probably that it's orange. Now, most people will know that the Netherlands is associated with orange, and that's going to be important for talking about the flags as well. Now, of course, this association with orange is thanks to the Dutch royal family, who are the House of Orange, who also came from the region of Orange in France, so that there's a whole connection there, and obviously also with the colour orange. And we have this to thank to William of Orange, or as we call him in Dutch, Willem van Oranje. And because of this, orange in the Netherlands is seen as a royal colour. It's also the colour worn by our football team. It's worn by our athletes in the Olympics, and basically on Koningsdag, Koninginnedag, when we celebrate the King and Queen in the Netherlands, then everyone wears orange. It's a big colour. If you know anything about the Netherlands, you'll know that orange is a big thing, and that's thanks to the House of Orange. And with the flag as well, actually the modern rendition of this flag, it's hard to say it was the official flag, because the Dutch flag as it was now has only been official since 1937, I think. Luxembourg, for example, their flag only became official in 1972, so it's hard to say, oh, this was an official flag for something that was around 1600. But it was used back then, and today we still sometimes in the Netherlands use this version of the flag with the orange, white and blue, but we call it the Prinsenvlag, which means, well, the prince's flag, because of the Prince of Orange. And in the Netherlands in the 17th century, it's quite an interesting dynamic, because at some points the Netherlands was a complete republic. At other times it was more of a constitutional monarchy, even though we didn't have a monarch until 1815, I believe. We had stadhouders, or literally translated as city holders. And these were essentially rulers. Although they weren't kings, they still had to act through various parliaments, which were in Dutch the faction supporting more of the democratic, the parliamentary republican system, were called the Staatsgezinde, or statesmen, I guess you could translate that as republicans. And you had the supporters of the royal family, who were the Orangists, who were called the Prinsgezinde, or those who supported the prince. And quite often it was the middle classes, the higher classes, more educated people, often quite devoutly Protestant, who were more in favour of the Republic, of the Staatsgezinde, and you had the lower class, essentially the plebs, who were the Prinsgezinde, who were the supporters of the royal family. It's quite interesting, because in England at the time, in the 1640s, you had the Civil War, which was between Parliament and between the king, the royalists, and quite often as well you had that split, but there were a lot of different factors contributing to that. And so, leading back to the flags, the orange on the flag is then a symbol for the royalty. So often that's why it's called the Prinsenvlag today, because it's orange, so it's symbolizing the prince. And actually, if you look at the old flag of South Africa, so the South African flag after they became independent from the British Empire, it's the flag that has orange, white and blue, and then they have the flags of, I think, the Oranje Vrijstaat and Transvaal, which were the two Boer republics who split away from the British Empire and obviously were later annexed again after the Second Boer War. That flag, often called the apartheid flag, because of the era of apartheid when that was the national flag of South Africa. The reason that is orange is because at the time of the Dutch going to South Africa, the Dutch flag was still orange, and that's why they held on to the orange rather than having it red, white, blue like the modern one. Now, in Dutch, it's quite funny because we have sort of a nickname for the Prinsenvlag, or for the orange flag, which is Oranje Blanje Bleu, which, if you are a Dutch speaker, you all know it's not exactly correct Dutch. And the funny thing is that that actually comes from French, because remember I said that part of the royal family was French. So you have, in French, Orange Blanche Bleu means orange, white, blue. And in Dutch, they Hollandified this French to oranje, blanje instead of blanche, so it rhymes with oranje, and then bleu, just because it's blue. So that's a fun little thing about, that original flag with the orange. So why did this flag change to red, and when did this happen? Well, it didn't happen overnight, and it's quite possible that the red, white, blue version of the flag has been around just as long as the orange version of the flag. And one of the reasons for this is that the red, white, blue version is often seen as being representative of the County of Holland, which, if you know about the County of Holland, that's essentially before we had the provinces of Holland. Right now we have North Holland and South Holland, North and South Holland. But the red, white, blue, that was a symbol of the County of Holland, as well as having a lion, a red lion on a golden background, which coincidentally is also a symbol of Scotland because of a claim pressed by, I think, Floris IV. But anyway, that's a story for another time. So that's one idea. And also another idea is that originally the rebels in the 80 Years' War, our war against the Spanish, that they used the red, white, blue. But when they got support from the House of Orange against the Spanish, that in honor of him, they changed it to orange. So it's possible that they were already using the red, white, blue version. Now, another reason which I quite like is that possibly the orange dye at the time, when left in the sun for a long time, as flags obviously are, that the orange would fade and become more of a red colour. So over time, the orange flags would change to red flags. Although I tend to think it would be the other way around, that you'd have a red flag, it would be in the sun for a while, and it would go to orange. But that's what I read. I'm not sure how much truth there is in that. I haven't had about 30 years to test out my authentic 17th century Prinsenvlag in the sun, so I'm not sure. But that's one reason I read. Now, as well, I mentioned that the orange, white, blue version, because of its connection to the Dutch royal family, is often and was used as something for the Prinsgezinde, for those Orangists, the Royalists who supported the Dutch royal family. But then it makes sense that the red version, which is called the Statenvlag, which means either the nation's flag or the state's flag, that would then be used by the more republican elements, by the Staatsgezinde, in opposition to the orange, white, blue of those who supported the House of Orange, the Orangists. Now, when did the shift occur? Because it's pretty evident if you look at the Dutch flag now, it's red, white, blue, and it's not orange, white, blue. Well, we tend to think this started to come around about the middle of the 17th century, around 1650. Now, if you look at Dutch paintings, it could be quite misleading because, as I said, the red, white, blue has been around for a long time. And I read as well, I'm not sure, again, how much truth there is in this, and I've looked at a few paintings, but paintings are difficult because you have to consider both which period they're portraying and when the painter was around, because the painter might have been born 200 years later and have no idea what he's painting. So he might have been painting something from 1630 and painted a red, white, blue, although in reality in 1630 they might have been using an orange, white, blue flag. So it's quite difficult. But I did read that the Verenigd Oost-India Company and the Verenigd West-India Company, the Dutch East and West India companies, that they never used the orange, white, blue, the Prinsenvlag. They always used the red, white, blue. Now, this might be because the merchants, the traders, the company men, that they were of a different class and that they were Staatsgezinde. Or it might be something to do with recognizing each other, because as well, if you think very important to the Dutch Republic at this time is being recognized at sea, because it's easier to see a red and a white and a blue flag at sea than it is to see an orange, a white, blue flag. So maybe that's why they did it. Although then, in contrast, the Dutch navy, so say the warships who did battle with the English and the French and the Spanish throughout various sea wars in the 17th century, that they pretty much until around 1650 they always used the orange, white, blue, possibly because the Marines, the sailors, would be from lower classes and they would be more prinsgezinde, they'd be more supportive of the Dutch royal family. So why was it adopted around 1650? Well, one reason could again be related to our neighbour, to England, because around about this time in the 1640s, the English Civil War was fought. And during the English Civil War, the parliamentarians, they chose for the colour red. Now, often parliamentarian soldiers, cavaliers, would... and when I'm saying cavaliers, I mean horseback troops, not cavaliers, which I probably shouldn't have used that term because cavaliers is often a term used to describe royalists. But the parliamentarians would often have red insignias. They'd often have red things. So that's one reason why the Dutch might try to use red in this period, because the Dutch around the year 1650, they were a full republic. They were completely a republic. And around 1650, after the parliamentarian victory, so was England. This was the only time that England was a republic under the Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell, a very Protestant Puritan republic, which the Dutch were as well at this period. The Dutch were also very Protestant and a republic. And as well, a reason why they might have shifted from the orange colour is that the Royalists, so those supporting Charles I, Charles Stuart, they often used orange as their colour. And the colour orange would often be associated with the Stuarts and the Stuart cause, who were the enemies of the parliamentarians, and therefore the enemy of my friend is my enemy kind of thing. The Dutch would be like, oh, let's change our flag red so that we can, in sort of solidarity with the English Republic. Now, another thing that changed in the Dutch flag from the, first of all, the Prinsenvlag, and secondly, from this newer flag that was implemented around 1650 with the red, white, blue, is the shade of blue. Now, if you look at the earlier paintings and things, then you see that the earlier Dutch flag of the Dutch Republic and the one that was used during the 80 Years' War, that both of these have a lighter shade of blue than the modern one. The modern shade of blue is darker. And actually, if you look at the flag of Luxembourg, then the only difference between the Dutch flag and theirs, apart from the ratio is sometimes more stretched, is that the Luxemburgians, Luxemburgundians. I don't know. How do you plurify people from Luxembourg in English? I'm going to go with Luxemburger. It sounds cool. So the only thing that you notice is that the Luxembourgers flag is a lighter shade of blue. So that flag is essentially the same shade of blue as it probably would have been before. But then why has the flag of the Netherlands, why has their flag become this darker shade of blue? Well, again, it might be down to the fact that the darker blue is going to be easier to see when you're at sea. So if you think of a beautiful Dutch warship, so of the paintings of Van der Velde, so say you've got a nice Dutch vloot, and on the very far horizon, you've spotted another warship. But if it's this very light colour of blue, and if the sky is also that very light colour of blue, because you're very rarely going to have a sky that is the colour of the modern Dutch blue in the flag, whereas the old Dutch blue in the flag looks maybe a lot more like the sea on a nice day. I know it's a bit, because then you can argue, well, at this point they're already using the red, so you'd have to be absolutely blind or colourblind not to notice the massive bloody red thing and the great big ship. But that might be another one of the reasons why they changed the shade of blue, although I'm quite sceptical of this one. I don't think that you would, have the whole falarkey of changing a national flag because the shade of blue might be confused. Although then again, they changed the Confederate flag because it looked too much like a Union flag when it was in the wrong wind and things like that. So I guess in the heat of battle, these things could happen. But another reason, which I think is more likely, is the French. Now, the Dutch Republic, after its golden age in the 17th century, has a period of steady decline, which I will blame both upon the British and the French. Thanks very much. And around the turn of the 18th century into the 19th century, republicanism takes root all through Europe. And you have, I think it was 1792, or was that the French Revolution? Or 1798. Somewhere around there, you have a period in the Netherlands where you have a lot of republicans. And then they're republicans in the French sense of the republicans, because the Dutch were technically a republic, but you had stadhouders after het rampjaar in 1672, so it's all a bit muddled. But you had these, let's call them extreme republicans, in the Netherlands, and I think they called them the French Patriots, and you have essentially a coup of these republicans who are obviously going to be aided by the French, and essentially you get a period of French rule in the Netherlands from the very last years of the 18th century up until 1813-14, when the French are defeated in Europe. And one of the things that the French did was to change the name. It was no longer the Dutch Republic, but het Bataafs Republiek, which is the Batavian Republic in English. And they also changed the flag. And this is the first time that we see officially that the colour is changed to a darker blue. Now, why would they change the colour from the lighter blue to the darker blue? Well, the darker blue probably has, it's more similar to the French flag. Now, I would just like to say, for everyone, and I mean everyone, who says when they see a Dutch flag, oh, it's a French flag, but the wrong way around. No, it isn't. The French flag was taken from the Dutch design. The Dutch were rebelling in 1588. 1588. The French adopted their poxy, stolen, wrongly orientated version of our glorious flag in the 1790s. So no, the French flag, that rag, is our flag, but the wrong way around. I just had to set that straight, because that just, it makes me so mad. But anyway, all of that aside, that might be one of the reasons why they made it darker, so it looked more like the French flag. Although, of course, as I just said in no uncertain terms, the French flag is just a vain attempt at copying the first true republic's flag, but that's by the by. Now, why is it stuck around then? If obviously the French period of rule in the Netherlands came to an end after Waterloo in 1815, which was at that point fought in the Netherlands, because Belgium wouldn't become independent until 1830, so it was fought in in Flanders. But then it stuck around, I guess, I don't know. I'm not really sure why the darker blue would have stuck around. Maybe people liked it more, probably to do with the dye as well. I imagine that red dye might be easier to come by than orange dye. That would also be a factor. And that as well, you've got to think as well. I'm talking in terms as if everyone strictly used orange the same shade and blue the same shade. But I imagine in the early period of the flag's usage as well, that there wouldn't be any sort of uniformity to the flags. I mean, you'd have a dash of anywhere from sort of vermilion to ochre on the top. You'd have a white slash, and you'd have a vaguely blue slash. I mean, there weren't people going around checking the exact sort of the red, green, and blue elements of each colour in them. I think we shouldn't really see it like that. So I guess the different colour of blue might have just been sort of used in accordance of whatever they had, and that people until fairly modern times wouldn't really care if their shade of blue was the exact same shade of blue as all the other flags in the country. So yeah, that's this little discussion video about the Dutch flags and how they've changed quite a lot. And I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's not my usual style of video, but as I said in my previous update, my laptop is being very annoying. So I've had to make do, and I hope this wasn't too dull, too rambly, too uninteresting for you all to follow along with. So thanks very much for watching. I'm History with Hilbert, and I'm going to make a few more of these. So see you soon.